She cheated on me with my best friend. They didn't know I owned everything. I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this here. I used to read these stories and think, how do people not see it coming? Turns out, you don't. Not when it's the two people you trust the most. I'm 32, and for the past few years, my life has been stable. Not perfect, but solid. I run a consulting business. It's not something I talk about much because it doesn't look impressive from the outside. No fancy office, no flashy lifestyle, just consistent work, long hours, and results that pay well. I've always preferred it that way. Quiet, private. And then there's Emily. We met 4 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, but she had this way of making you feel like you were the only one she was talking to. We started dating a few weeks later. At first, it was easy, effortless, late-night drives, cheap takeout, random conversations about everything and nothing. She moved in with me about a year later. It just made sense. And then there's Ryan. Ryan isn't just a friend. He's the friend. We met in college when we were both broke, stressed, and trying to figure life out. Bad jobs, failed ideas, relationships that didn't last. If you had asked me a year ago who I trusted the most in this world, I would have said his name without thinking. The three of us fell into a rhythm over time. Weekend hangouts, movie nights, occasional drinks that turned into long conversations. It felt normal, comfortable, safe. Looking back now, I keep replaying things in my head, trying to figure out when it changed, because it did. I just didn't see it when it mattered. It started small. Emily began spending more time on her phone. That's normal, right? Everyone does. But it wasn't just that. She'd smile at messages, then lock her screen when I walked by. At first, I teased her about it. Secret admirer, I joked one night. She laughed it off. Yeah, totally. I'm living a double life. I laughed too. Because why wouldn't I? Ryan started dropping by more often. At first, I didn't question it. He'd had one for years. We were that close. But suddenly, dropping by became frequent, unplanned. Bro, I was just nearby, he'd say. And maybe he was. Or maybe I just didn't want to think too much about it. There was one moment that stuck with me. It didn't seem like much at the time. Now it won't leave my head. We were all sitting in the living room one evening. Just TV in the background, half watching something none of us cared about. I got up to grab drinks from the kitchen. It took maybe 2 minutes. When I came back, they went quiet. Not gradually, not naturally. Instantly. That kind of silence has weight. You can feel it. I looked at them and they both avoided eye contact for just a second too long. Then Emily smiled. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. At least, I thought I did. That night stayed with me, not as a clear warning. Just a feeling, like something slightly out of place. Over the next few weeks, those little moments started adding up. Emily had more girls' nights. Work ran late more often. She started taking calls in another room. Ryan? He became harder to reach when I wanted to hang out one-on-one. Crazy week, he'd text. But somehow, he still had time to come over when Emily was home. I noticed it. Of course I did. I'm not stupid. But there's a difference between noticing something and accepting what it might mean. So I did what most people do. I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking. That relationships go through phases. That people get busy. That trust matters. And I trusted them. Completely. One night, Emily told me she had a work dinner. Client thing, she said while getting ready. She looked different, not in a bad way, just more effort than usual. You look nice, I said. She smiled. It's kind of important. She left around 7. I stayed home, finished some work, then ended up watching something random. Around 10, I texted her. Heading back soon? No reply. Not unusual. I didn't think much of it. Around 11:30 I got a message. Still here, might be late, don't wait up. I stared at the message for a second longer than I should have. Then I put my phone down. The next morning, she acted normal. Too normal. I didn't ask questions. I didn't push. But something had shifted. I could feel it now. clearer than before. The turning point came a few days later. And the only reason it happened was because of something completely random. I had a business trip planned, 2 days out of town. Emily knew about it, Ryan knew about it. The night before I left, the three of us had dinner together. Everything seemed fine, normal, laughing, talking, joking. At one point, Ryan made a comment. "Man, must be nice getting out of the city for a bit." I shrugged. "Work trip. Not exactly a vacation." Emily smiled at him. Not at me. At him. It was quick, subtle, but I saw it. And for the first time, I didn't brush it off. The next morning, I packed my bag. Emily hugged me goodbye. "Kinda gonna miss you," she said. "Only kinda?" I teased. She laughed. Ryan texted me later that day. "Safe travels, bro." Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But it didn't feel normal anymore. That night, sitting alone in a hotel room, I kept thinking about that look. That one small moment. And I realized something I should have realized earlier. I didn't trust what I was seeing anymore. So I made a decision. One that would change everything. I cut my trip short. I didn't tell Emily. I just got in my car and started driving back home. The drive back felt longer than it should have. It wasn't just the distance. It was everything running through my head. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that I'd get home and feel stupid for even thinking this way, that Emily would be there, maybe asleep, maybe watching TV, that Ryan wouldn't be anywhere near my house. I wanted that version of reality, badly. But there was another part of me, the quiet one, the one that had been noticing things for weeks. That part wasn't hopeful. It was certain. I reached my street a little after 11 p.m. Everything looked normal. Lights on in a few houses. Still. Then I saw it. Ryan's car, parked right outside my place. For a second, I just sat there, engine still running, hands on the steering wheel. My first instinct was to explain it away. Maybe he stopped by to grab something. Maybe something was wrong. Maybe. But deep down I already knew. I turned off the engine and just sat there, letting the silence settle, letting the truth catch up to me. Then I got out of the car. I didn't rush, didn't slam the door, didn't make a scene. I walked up to my house like I always did, unlocked the door, stepped inside. The lights were dim, living room empty, TV off, but there was music playing. Low. Coming from down the hallway. My bedroom. That was the moment everything inside me went quiet. No anger, no panic, no confusion. Just clarity. I walked slowly toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. And then I heard it. Laughter. Her laugh, and his. It's a strange thing. Hearing something familiar in a place it shouldn't be. I stood outside the door for a few seconds, not moving, not breathing properly. Part of me wanted to leave, to just walk out, pretend I never came back. But I didn't. I opened the door. Time doesn't slow down like people say. It sharpens. Emily, Ryan, my bed. They both froze, like the world had just stopped. Emily pulled the blanket up instantly. Ryan just stared at me, wide-eyed, like he couldn't process what he was seeing. No one spoke. I think they expected me to explode, to yell, to lose control. But I didn't. I leaned against the doorframe, crossed my arms, and just looked at them. "Hey," I said. My voice sounded normal, almost casual. That seemed to scare them more than anything. Emily's eyes filled with tears immediately. "Wait, I can explain." Ryan jumped in. "It's not, bro. It's not what you think." I actually laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. Because it looks pretty straightforward from here. Silence again. Heavy this time. Emily started crying harder. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. pacing like he was trying to find the right words. There weren't any. I looked around the room. My room. The place I built, paid for, lived in. And they were standing there like they belonged. That's when something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted. I straightened up, took a step back toward the door. You should get dressed, I said. Calm. Flat. They both looked confused. We'll talk later, and then I walked out. I could feel their eyes on me as I left, waiting for something more, some reaction, some emotion. But I gave them nothing. Got back in my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed distance. I ended up parked somewhere random, about 20 minutes away. Engine off. Phone buzzing nonstop. Emily. Ryan. Over and over again. I didn't answer. Not once. Instead, I just sat there, thinking, replaying everything. Every moment. Every sign I ignored. Every time I trusted them, without question. It's funny. You don't realize how much you've given people until you see how easily they throw it away. After a while, the shock faded, and something else took its place. Not rage, not heartbreak, control. Because here's the thing, they thought they had the upper hand. They thought I was the one being played, but they didn't know everything. Not even close. And for the first time that night, I started to see the situation clearly. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a mistake. Their mistake, and they had no idea what it was about to cost them. I finally looked at my phone. Dozens of missed calls, messages piling up. Emily, please talk to me. I'm so sorry. It didn't mean anything. Ryan, bro, please answer. Let me explain. This isn't how it looks. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I put the phone down again. Because explanations didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what I was going to do next. And I already had an idea. I just needed a little time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to remind them exactly who they had just betrayed. I started the car. And this time, I wasn't driving away from the problem. I was driving straight toward it. I didn't go back home that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. By the time I started the car again, my head was clear. Not empty, clear. There's a difference. I wasn't thinking about what they did anymore. I already knew. I had seen enough. What I was thinking about was what came next. Because here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just break trust. It reveals truth. And the truth was simple. They thought I was someone I wasn't. They thought I was just there, comfortable, predictable, easy to fool. They didn't know how much of their lives were tied to mine, and they definitely didn't know how quickly that could change. I spent the night going over everything, not emotionally, practically. The house, the car, the accounts, the business. Everything was in my name, structured that way for a reason. I don't mix emotions with ownership, never have. Ryan's job? That was the interesting part. A couple of years ago, I had quietly invested in the company he works for. Not publicly, not loudly, just enough to matter. Enough that decisions like hiring and firing eventually came through me. He never knew. Why would he? To him I was just doing consulting. I almost smiled when I realized that. Almost. By morning, I had a plan. Simple, clean, final. I went back home around 9 a.m. The house was quiet, too quiet. Emily was sitting on the couch, still in the same clothes, eyes red, face pale. She looked up the second I walked in. Please, just let me explain, she said. I didn't respond. I just walked past her. That hit her harder than anything I could have said. Ryan wasn't there. Good. I went into my office, closed the door, and started making calls. Short conversation. Straight to the point. Draft a notice, I said. Occupancy termination. 1 week. No hesitation. No questions. Second call was to the company. Not directly to Ryan. To the person above him. We talked numbers, performance, restructuring. By the end of that call, Ryan no longer had a job. I sat back in my chair, looked around the room. Same house, same walls, but something felt different. Not broken, just reset. I walked back into the living room. Emily stood up immediately. "Can we talk now?" she asked. I looked at her for a moment, really looked at her. 4 years, and somehow, this was the first time I felt like I was seeing her clearly. "Later," I said. That word again. Later. I gave it 2 days, not for them, for me, to make sure I wasn't acting on impulse, to make sure everything was exactly how I wanted it. On the 3rd day, I texted both of them. "Come over, 7 p.m. We're talking." Ryan replied almost instantly. "Thank you." Emily just sent, "Okay." That evening felt controlled. No chaos, no uncertainty. Just a conversation that needed to happen. They arrived within minutes of each other, didn't look at each other, didn't speak. Good. I was already sitting in the living room. Same spot as always. They sat across from me, like they had 100 times before. But this time, everything was different. "I'm not here to argue," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not here to hear excuses either." They both nodded quickly, too quickly. "I just want to make things clear." I reached over to the table, picked up a folder, and placed it in front of them. "Open it." Emily hesitated. Ryan didn't. He flipped it open. At first, he looked confused. Then, focused. Then pale. Emily leaned in. Started reading. Her hands began to shake. "This house," I said calmly, "is mine." Emily swallowed. "I know that." I shook my head slightly. "You don't." I pointed to the documents. Property ownership. Purchase history. Everything. Then I flipped to the next section. "The car you drive," I said, looking at Emily. "Also mine." She looked like she might pass out. Then I turned to Ryan. "And your job?" He stiffened. I slid another paper forward. "Termination notice. Signed. Dated. Final." "You're done," I said. He stared at it like it wasn't real. "You can't?" he started. I already did. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. "I helped you get that job," I continued. "Then I invested in the company." That's when it hit him. Fully. "You," he said quietly. I didn't nod, didn't smile. I just let the truth sit there. Emily started crying again. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said. I looked at her. "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think at all." Ryan leaned forward. "Man, we messed up. I messed up. But this is too far." I almost laughed. "Too far?" I repeated. "You walked into my house," I said. "My space." I leaned forward slightly. "And you think consequences are too far?" He had no answer. Of course he didn't. I stood up. Conversation over. "You have 1 week," I said to Emily, "to move out." She shook her head. "Please don't do this. It's already done." Then I looked at Ryan. "Don't contact me again." That one hit differently. Not anger. Finality. They both just sat there, like they were waiting for something to change. Nothing did. As they walked toward the door, I said one last thing. "I gave you both everything," I said quietly. They stopped. "And you still chose this." Neither of them turned around. The door closed, and just like that, they were gone. The next few weeks were quiet. Emily moved out on the 6th day. Didn't take much. Most of it was never hers to begin with. Ryan tried reaching out once, from a different number. I didn't respond. I heard things through mutual friends. He struggled. Job gone. Reputation damaged. Emily moved in with a friend, then somewhere else. I didn't follow up, didn't check, didn't care. Realized. They didn't take anything from me. They exposed themselves, and in doing that, they removed themselves from my life. Which, in the end, was exactly what needed to happen. The house feels different now. Quieter. Cleaner. Not empty. Peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, I can sit in my own space and know that everything in it is exactly where it should be.